everyone, welcome back to Null Vector. Today I'm going to be doing a guide for newer players, basically how to play Vermintide 2 as a newer player, introducing some of the concepts that don't really exist in games outside of Fatshark games. I do find, you know, when talking with friends and trying to like get them into this game, there's typically there's three responses. First one is they love the game and they get into it and they love it just like I do. But the second response is they kind of like play it like a hack and slash game. They just kind of like left click their way to victory at the lower difficulties. You know, they level up their chosen class, they beat the game, they go through the skitter gate, and they're just like, well, that was pretty cool, like fun spectacle, but I'm gonna move on to other things, right? And then the last response is kind of like, oh, this game's just too hard. Like, I keep getting hit, I keep getting, you know, pounced by assassins, my team sucks, it's not the kind of game for me. I would say with, you know, people kind of left clicking their way through the game at lower difficulties, they haven't really experienced what Vermintide is. And this is coming from a guy, you know, I played lower difficulties quite a long time when I first was getting into this game. But yeah, once I bumped up the difficulty and I was getting like insta-downed, I was getting surrounded by enemies and just absolutely mauled, I was like, this game is too hard. Like, I was one of those people. But it's not. It's, you just need to learn good behaviors and adjust your play style at high difficulties and, you know, engage with the game's mechanics in a way that is gonna lead you to success. It's honestly not that hard. Like, I wouldn't say I'm good at video games generally, but, you know, I can clear Cataclysm on this with, you know, if I got a decent team, I can clear that pretty reliably and kind of carry my own weight. So I wouldn't say this is a high skill game at the highest levels, but I would say there's a bit of learning to do. So my goal with this video is just to kind of like give you a bunch of rules to keep in the back of your mind as you play, and mechanics to kind of learn as you play. So it kind of will hopefully accelerate the learning process. Because I do feel like a lot of people kind of switch off this game before they've actually learned how to play it. So that's my goal, and we're playing with Coop today. Also, I'm going to be showing some Cataclysm gameplay at the end of this video. I'm going to be narrating the gameplay, so telling you, you know, how I'm playing, why I'm playing the way I am, what my mind was going through at the time, telling you the good things that I did, but also the bad things I did. You know, like, we all make mistakes, and you always want to learn from those mistakes if you can. And with each one of these rules, I'll also try to splice in some gameplay footage that shows off that given rule, so you kind of got a visual reference for it, so I'm not just kind of ranting into the void here. Let's get started. So we're going to start with rule number 1, which is defense is king. And something else I didn't explain, this is going to be ordered in from most important to least important. Right, so I've put defense is king as rule number 1 for a very good reason, and that's just because of the way I find most new players engage with this game is they're just going to come in swinging their sword, they want to kill the rats, they want to chop up rat heads, and you know, that is kind of just the typical response with anything that's kind of like hack and slash, you know, first person shooter. It's like usually offense is king with most games, and you know, there's quite a lot of offensive play required for this game as well. But I would say this game and games like Dark Souls are probably one of the few games where it really discourages kind of left clicking your way through the game and encourages kind of more a thoughtful approach to combat and engaging with the game's mechanics. So defense is king is rule number 1, and I'm just going to kind of cover the basic concepts of each of kind of your defensive abilities. So I'm going to start out with dodging. So dodging is probably, you know, I don't know, it's the best kind of way to avoid damage. I've explained this in previous videos, but dodging basically breaks enemy targeting. So as I move around this enemy, he's going to turn to face me. If he's swinging his sword, he's going to continue to track me until his sword swing completes and he hits me, right? But if I throw in a dodge while he's swinging his sword, then, I dodge here, then he'll swing his sword to that direction, because through the duration of the dodge, I broke his targeting. So he's just going to swing into air over here. Now, the big benefit of dodging is as you're dodging, it doesn't interrupt your attacks at all. You can dodge and swing. So you can kind of keep up your offensive potential as you're kind of acting defensively. Some things to take note of is different weapons have different dodge profiles. So I'm using a greatsword right now. It's not a great dodge profile. So you can see as I dodge, I move a decent distance, which is going to be enough to, make someone miss their attack. But as I keep doing it, yeah, I think around the 4th or 5th dodge, I start running out of stamina, right? And it's kind of like a little shuffle. I'm shuffling in place. Like this is still going to get me hit. I'm very much a sitting duck right now. So, yeah, different weapons have different dodge limits and different dodge distances. And obviously, the higher the dodge distance and limit, the more, it promotes dodging, and it's more defensive in that way. Our next defensive tool is blocking. You just hold down right click, or whatever your given controls are. It probably should be like right click, it shouldn't really be anything else. So blocking, you will block in a 360-degree arc around yourself, right? So you are completely immune to damage as long as you have the stamina, which is those shields in the middle of my screen, kind of on top of my sword there. As long as you have the stamina to block the damage, right? So each incoming hit is going to drain a certain amount of stamina. And stamina is dependent on the weapon. So you can see with the greatsword here, we've got stamina on the top right there. That will dictate your defensive arc. Fortunately, I can't use my mouse here. So if you can see that kind of blue arc, that's the space in front of you where you will get a bonus to defending against. So attacks coming in from your front drain less stamina than attacks coming in from the rear, that black arc there. And then you can see with like shield weapons, so this one's got 5 stamina, and then look at the arc, it's broadened, right? So you have a wider range of defense bonuses coming in from the front there. So people from the sides, you'll also get a defensive bonus. And then okay, there we go. Yeah, so mace and shield, more defensive even still. So a wider arc, still 5 stamina. So keep in mind that. And I know, can we do like a less good weapon here? I think all of Kruger's are pretty damn good. Even the mace is 4.5, which is pretty nice. Yeah, so typically kind of like assassin-y type weapons like dual daggers on the elf will have a tiny little arc and very low stamina. Let's just show that off quickly. So dual daggers, yeah, look at that. So tiny little arc in front. I'm not sure why they've kind of done that vertical line to kind of split the arc in two. It's a little bit strange. Anyone comment below if you know what that is. I'll pin your comment. But yeah, you can see smaller arc, 2 stamina, so very non-defensive. But with the dual daggers, it's probably, so you can see the dodge distance. This is a sword and dagger, but way higher. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so around 8 or around the 9th dodge is when I start running out of stamina. So certain weapons promote certain defensive maneuvers more, but both, like, you know, the greatsword can still dodge, so there's no reason to not use it, and the dual daggers can still block, so no reason to not use that. It's just they're stronger at certain things than others, but you should still be using both generally. So blocking, very good for if you don't know what's behind you generally, right? So dodging, again, very good for maintaining your defensive posture while maintaining your offense. Blocking is like, okay, I've been focusing over here a little bit too much. I think I hear something behind me. Let's put up a block. Let's turn around. Let's assess the situation. All right, it's looking good. We see an opening. Let's continue our attack, right? So that's something that blocking is really good for. I don't know, just generally, like, you got incoming attacks. So, like, you see an opening, you slash a bit, and then the horde's getting way too dense in front of you because it can only cleave through a certain amount. Then put up a block those attacks. They'll kind of bounce off you if they're Skaven slaves, and then just continue your attack, right? Yeah, there's multiple instances where like dodging would be better than a block, and blocking would be better than a dodge. I mean, another example that comes to mind is elite overhead attacks. So you can block those, but it's better to dodge them because they're just extremely damaging and they'll stun you if they kind of connect with you. So our third defensive maneuver is pushing. So as you block, you press left click. Now, this drains stamina, as you can see, and different weapons, again, have different push strengths. But pushing is extremely important to learn. I find new players tend to stay away from pushing because they're just like, why would I push something, do 0 damage to it, when I can just swing my sword and do 30 damage to it? The reason is because the stagger on your sword swing is miles less stagger than the amount of stagger a push does. So if you want to stun whatever it is that's attacking you, a push is going to be the way to go rather than a sword swing. You know, if you think about it in the sense of creating space for you and your team, so you got a big horde in front of you, it's really dense, you're blocking a few attacks, but you want to, you know, re-up your offense and start cleaving through them and getting rid of the horde. The best way to create the space to do so is to push and then continue your attacks, right? In that moment that you pushed, you have staggered all the little like clan rats and Skaven slaves in front of you. I believe they also kind of, there's like a ripple effect. They'll push the Skaven slaves behind them, and basically everything in an arc in front of you will be kind of useless for a short duration. So pushing is extremely powerful in that regard. Another thing is elites coming at you. So generally if they're not doing an overhead attack, which is, you know, they raise their 2 arms above their head with their weapon ready to kind of, you know, drop the hammer down on your head. If they're not doing that, you can generally stagger them with a push. It probably will depend on the weapon and all that, but that's going to be extremely useful too. I'd probably say Chaos Warriors would be very hard to stagger, but yeah, just a good way, again, to create the space to deal with the elite. And, you know, for the Greatsword, pretty good elite combo weapon because your elite DPS comes from the push attack. So just in case you didn't know, if you push, you hold down right click and left click to push, but if you want to do a push attack, you hold down right click and hold left click to push and follow up with an attack, which with this weapon is that, which brings it down on their head, does armor piercing damage, all that kind of thing. So this is a very good combo for elites, kind of staggers them, then brings the damage down. Alright, so that's pushing, extremely useful, again, along with dodging, blocking, pushing. These kind of form the golden triangle of defense, and I would highly recommend, even if you're playing lower difficulties, even if you can left click your way through the game, to start learning this, because this is extremely useful for high level play. Without using those abilities, you will go down extremely fast. Okay, the last kind of, I guess, lesser defensive maneuver is actually attacking. So I did allude to this before, but your sword swings also have a stagger effect. It's going to be extremely minor, especially for swords. Swords are generally, they do unarmored damage and they cleave really well. That's generally what a sword is good for. But if we bring out the Great Hammer, for example, this thing does less damage per swing, but it does a lot more stagger. And can cleave through enemies and kind of stun them all. So different weapons have different stagger profiles, but generally if you kind of do this hammer swing through a, 3 clan rats in front of you, they're all going to be staggered, they're all going to be useless, allowing for follow-up attack. You'll be generally pretty safe there. However, something to keep in mind, let's say there's 6 clan rats in front of me, I'm not going to be able to cleave through all of them and stun through all of them. So if I just do a heavy attack and then a follow-up with a heavy attack, those 3 that weren't cleaved through are going to get free attacks on me right then and there. So you got to be mindful of the density of the enemies in front of you. You got to be mindful of your weapon profile and cleave profiles and stagger profiles to avoid trading hits with the enemies. But I just thought I'd mention it. Like, there are opportunities where, okay, yeah, 3 Skaven slaves, let's just go in swinging. Like, they're not going to be able to do anything to me. Maybe I'll throw in some dodges just to be safe, right? But they're not going to be able to do anything to me while I'm keeping my attacks up. I only need to start worrying when some armor gets thrown in or the horde gets thicker. Okay, so that is rule number 1 complete. That's probably going to be the biggest rule, because that's probably the thing I want to most, that's going to be the first thing I teach a new player, is all the defensive maneuvers. And this applies to the other Fatshark games too, like Darktide and, Vermintide 1. All of these games share similar mechanics, and all of them at high level play, defense is king. It is going to keep you alive. It is going to avoid you getting downed, because you take a lot of damage in this game at high level difficulties. Alright, rule number 2 is stick together. I feel like this is a pretty obvious one, but it is super important, and even people who have been playing the game for a long time, because they get kind of cocky and they're super sure of their own abilities, they'll like peel away from the team and just run off and, I don't know, try to find loot or whatever. But if you want to be serious about beating a level, that is a terrible idea to run away from your team. The game actually actively punishes you for moving away from your team. So if you peel away from your team and, my 3 teammates are over there and I'm over here, it's going to be more likely to spawn in hook rats and assassins, which are the, the major disablers in this game, to kind of pounce on me, to force my teammates to come to me and save my ass because I chose to, peel away from them. So just know that the game actively punishes you for not sticking together. It's going to spawn more specials. And, just another thing, like if we look at, say Marcus's ultimate, he's going to heal all nearby allies, 25 health, which is massive. Like, that's a huge boon. If you're not near your team doesn't get this, and they're missing out on the healing that you could have provided them. There's a lot of auras in this game as well, so I've already done a video on the Foot Knight. I really like his aura. His aura is amazing. It's useless if you're not near your team. So that's rule number 2. Quick one, stay near your team. Alright, rule number 3, temporary HP is your lifeblood. So in every single class, the level 5 talents deal with temporary HP generation. Generally, for anything that kind of carves through multiple targets, carve is going to be the best if it's an option to you. There are some exceptions where fast, low cleaver attacks, like dual daggers for example, I would pick Sting, which rewards you for hitting weak spots, as well as, weak spots and criticals. and usually, you know, these weapons have high critical rates and are very easy to hit weak spots with. So Sting is a pretty good one for that. Execute, I have never taken that. I have seen some people recommend it, but generally I try to go for something, you know, more kind of general. So Carve is kind of my go-to pick, and sometimes a staggering one, because sometimes you don't have Carve. Then I probably pick the stagger one with like a shield weapon. I add that in my Foot Knight build, because pushing staggers enemies. So just pushing an enemy can give you THP with a stagger talent, which is very nice. But yeah, so generally I pick Carve, then Second Wind as a backup, and then Sting with kind of certain weapon setups. Is kind of generally how I do that. But yeah, THP, like think of it as you know, the game Halo, where you got like a shield that protects your green or your health. This game you start out with full health, but as you play and you attack enemies or you stagger them or whatever your talent is, you'll generate THP, which is kind of the white health in your health bar. That is free HP, and that is HP that you should consider disposable, because it's going to decay over time anyway. So it's the way by which, even if you're extremely low health, you can kind of continue fighting, and you can actually go from like 1 HP to like 100 if you're good enough, and basically have a fully healed character from nothing if you're playing carefully enough and you know, engaging with your THP generating abilities. So yeah, no one's ever out of the fight. You can always use THP generation, get back into the game, and I guess kind of a more advanced concept with THP is your ultimate. So you can see my purple bar's full. If I use my ultimate, it'll empty, and then it will kind of slowly charge up. Something this game does that isn't fully explained to newer players is when you take damage, your ultimate actually gets a bonus to its recharge. So if I take like 10 HP, I don't know what the actual value is, but it might bump my ultimate up like 10% or something. So some people, if you're a little bit more advanced, because THP is going to be lost anyway, they will convert their THP into ultimate cooldown by taking damage on purpose. Obviously, very kind of dangerous and risky. You might take more damage than you intended to and lose some of your precious green health. But it's something to be mindful of, and I'm pretty sure in this Cataclysm gameplay that I've got coming up, I'm doing that a lot. I mean, I'm not really doing it on purpose, I'm just taking the damage because, you know, Cataclysm's hard. But it's something to be mindful of. It's also good to be mindful of because, you know, let's say you take damage not intending to take damage, and you might be downed at any time, and you think you're gonna go down. Just be wary, your ultimate might be off cooldown because you've taken that damage, and it might actually save your ass. So, you know, remember your ultimate can be used as a panic button, depending on what the ultimate is. I think the last thing I kind of mentioned with THP generation is, I've already alluded to this in quite a few videos now, but ranged focus classes will, if you're unleashing into a horde, you are denying your team temporary HP generation. Because generally the horde, once you play this game a bunch, isn't a huge threat. It's more of an inconvenience and a distraction from the real threats, which are specials and elites, or bosses. So a horde in and of itself isn't super dangerous and can actually be a boon because your teammates can harvest them for THP. But if you're shooting them with like 1,000 arrows, or you know, you're the outcast engineer career that Barton has, and you're unloading your minigun into the horde, then you are denying that THP to your friends. Now, there are instances where that is extremely useful. Let's say you're the rear guard, your teammates are like pushing through the horde in front, and there's a bit of the horde trickling up from behind. You know, mow those guys down, because you don't want to get surrounded. You don't want your team to, you know, get backstabbed. You know, feel free to you use whatever tools are available to you, because your team probably wasn't gonna care too much if you know, whatever method you use to dispatch of those. So there's obviously exceptions, but I'd just say generally, if you are using a lot of ranged attacks into a horde, it generally is not a good thing, with some exceptions. Rule number 4, also extremely important. We need to listen for sound cues. This game is very good at warning you of any impending threats. And we're mainly, I mean, elites don't make sounds, but specials and bosses certainly do. And specials are the #1 threat in this game. Bosses are not. Bosses are, think of them as like a big kind of obstacle in your way that you need to kind of climb over in order to progress. But, you know, once you play this game a bit and you've kind of learned all of the attack patterns for all the different bosses, then a solo player can kite a boss, no problem, by blocking and dodging and all that kind of stuff. So they're not a huge threat by themselves, but when they are a big threat is a boss backed up by specials, or just a large group of specials by themselves. You know, you got a gas rat lobbing gas grenades at you got an assassin pouncing one of your teammates, you got a hook rat, you know, kind of making a lot of noise around you, freaking you out, and you might pick off another teammate. And then you got a blight storm on top of all of that, calling in a blight storm on top of your whole team while one is downed, another one is hooked, and you're trying to help everyone. That is a very complex and difficult puzzle to solve, especially if they're backed up by a horde, and the, you know, it's little scamming slaves are poking you with their spears and everything while you're trying to like help your team out. The sound cues in this game are really going to help you to know about the threats that are coming up, and are super important with some of the other rules that I'll kind of elaborate on in the future. But yes, just learn the sounds of every single special and boss, and keep your ear out for those sounds during chaotic moments in gameplay. It's very easy to pick them out when, you know, nothing's really happening, but it's a little bit more difficult to pick them out when you're surrounded by a horde, you've got the soundtrack pumping in your ears, and you know, a gas rat spawns in the distance somewhere. It's good to know that that gas rat exists somewhere in the level and that he's coming to get you, and the only way to do that is to keep your ears wide open.
I killed a wolf fire thrower. I smell rat-man poison.
Don't like that, do you, gas rat?
Alright, we're going to move on to rule number 5. We're going to talk about the most dangerous game to hunt. This is, again, a general rule. This is not, you know, a Bible verse in any sense. So take it with a grain of salt. I just kind of want to generally talk about what the most dangerous enemies in this game are and are not. So I would say the most dangerous enemy in this game is specials. I've already alluded to that. A big group of specials is a big concern. Your range specific character should be keeping an ear out, and when they hear the specials, pull out their ranged weapon and trying to deal with that if they can, if they've got the space to do so. And then it's kind of your job to kind of keep those guys safe while they're trying to pick off the specials. So specials first. Now, how it breaks down from here, I think that's pretty uncontroversial, but how it breaks down from here can kind of vary from situation to situation. But then I would say the next highest threat is the horde, or just like sneaky little Skaven slaves in general, trying to sneak up behind you and jab you full of their pointy sticks. Why is this? Well, let's say we've got 3 elites on the field and we got a boss. You can kite those guys, like, you can kite them fine. And you can kite horde too, but just generally it's going to be way faster to kill a horde than it is going to be kill 3 chaos warriors while a horde is surrounding you and a boss is pounding you, right? So you kind of want to deal with the easiest threats first, get rid of the horde, isolate the elites and the boss, and then deal with them then. So I would say the second kind of order priorities of threats to deal with is the horde, just because of its ease of disposal, and it can be dangerous if you are distracted by the other things, whereas it's easier to kind of dodge overheads and boss combos. Right, and then I would say I would kind of rate elites above bosses in terms of danger, just because generally they're more numerous, and I would say actually like massed elites, so massed chaos warriors, are actually can get quite dangerous for a team. They're just throwing out a lot of overheads. They can flatten a team in short order. And, you know, this applies to Berserkers too. Berserkers can down you with one flurry. And again, they're just less durable than a boss. That's going to take less time to kill an elite than a boss, or a group of elites. So I would argue that elites are more dangerous than or a high priority of dealing with than the boss. Yeah, and then finally, no surprise here, we have the boss. The boss is the most durable enemy, but it's also the most kiteable. Again, one person can solo the boss while the other team deals with the other threats. So that should generally be the goal with every boss encounter at higher levels of play.
Only hurts when I laugh, hurts when I breathe. I don't get you need to heal.
Okay, moving on to rule number 6. Let's talk about team positioning. So I've already elaborated that the team should stick together. That should be, you know, at the forefront of everyone's mind. But also just be a little bit mindful of team positioning. Now, this also applies to kind of horde management. So if you've got a horde spawning in, say right now, I'm actually positioned in a pretty good way to deal with that horde right now, because there's kind of two main ways the horde can come from, and both ways my weapon's gonna cleave through that horde and stagger them, and I can kind of kill them pretty easy. Be mindful with ledges like this. Skavens can climb, so they could kind of climb up the barristers here and kind of surprise me from a slightly new angle. They could also drop down from above, so you can see this ledge way above me. They could drop down there and drop right in front of me here. Catch me by surprise, especially if my back's turned this way, and be like, oh shit, where did he come from? All that is to say that when you have a horde spawn, you could fight them out in the open like this, or you could put your back to a corner and limit the approaches that the Skavens can give you. So you've got this short arc now. Again, my sword cleaves through most of this arc, so it's a pretty safe approach. From a horde perspective, this is not always going to be useful, and this ties into the sound cues rule. Again, if a gas rat spawns and he's up there and I'm in a corner and I'm cleaving the Skaven slaves, he could, like, this is a perfect, well, close to ideal situation for him. He lobs a gas grenade in right here. If I stay in the corner, I take damage. If I push through, I take damage, and there is no way to avoid taking massive damage from a gas grenade. And, you know, the most ideal way out of that situation would be to try to cleave through and push through the horde to, like, get out of the gas grenade as fast as possible, where by doing so I risk further damage. So it really depends on the situation, and it really ties into knowing your sound cues and knowing what threats are out there will determine where the optimum positioning is. And you're not going to get this, like, as a new player. I just want you to be mindful that it's a concept, right? The other thing I'd say, just generally with team positioning, is a little bit of space is good. So you want to stick together, yes. Yeah, so a little bit of space is good because it's going to help your team avoid friendly fire at higher levels of play. I think champion and above friendly fire comes into effect. Generally, it's not too much to worry about. I'd say if you got a special up there but you risk injuring a teammate, like by shooting through them and hitting the special, you still take the shot, because it's like, I don't know, a few ticks of HP. It's not a huge deal. But it can scale, especially with certain kinds of abilities. So if you use Bounty Hunter's ultimate, like massive one-shot ability on someone's head, that's still going to do a massive amount of damage to them. A little bit of space just helps avoid friendly fire and clears kind of firing arcs for your ranged teammates to take out those specials better. It's also going to help you not take damage from the same attack. It's also going to not clutter your vision. So if you got like a teammate right in front of you, you can't really see what's behind them. It could be an elite charging an overhead that you don't have the time to dodge out of the way from in time. So it clears visibility, firing arcs, and also makes you more immune to, well, better protected against attacks like the gas grenade from the gas rat. if you spread out a little bit. If you're all stacked on top of each other, the gas grenade is going to do a lot of damage to all of you. Alright, rule number 7. Reviving a teammate is often the most preferential course of action. So in the heat of a battle, when a teammate goes down, they're red, they're bleeding out on the floor, they need a pickup. A lot of players are tempted to kind of like, you know, go full clutch mode and be like, I'm going to kill the whole horde, I'm going to kill all these elites and all these specials coming for us, and then I'm going to pick up my teammate and show everyone how much of a badass I am. There are some rare instances where that is actually preferable, especially, again, if you hear a sound cue for an assassin and it's you and one other guy, and the other guy's just got downed, but you know an assassin's prowling around out there. It would probably be a bad idea to pick up your teammate at that moment in time until that assassin is dealt with, because that's an instant game over if he pounces you, and you're not a moving target if you're picking up your teammate. So there are rare instances where picking up your teammate is not the ideal course of action, but generally I would say it is. It is better to stop slaying the horde, go pick up your teammate during a horde so that they are back in action, they can heal themselves, they can pick up specials, they can contribute to the team damage. That is preferable than not doing it most of the time. Something this game doesn't really explain to you, and I find a lot of new players don't really realize, is when you're picking up a teammate, the game automatically blocks for you. So you'll have you know, if I'm this Kruber, I've got my 3.5 stamina shields worth of block, where, you know, if I'm surrounded by even like say 5 Skaven slaves, I could pick up a teammate in the middle of those fine, they could all start attacking me and I'd be pretty damn safe for the duration of that pickup. Again, this kind of varies by weapon. If you've got a sword and shield, even better. You could pick up teammates in even more dangerous situations. But definitely be mindful of the threats on the field. So if you've got specials that could end the game if you pick up your teammate, maybe hold off. If you have a bunch of elites around that could throw overheads right on top of you while you're picking out your teammate, maybe you need to deal with them. So there are exceptions to this rule, but I really want to kind of highlight how important it is in team play to get your teammates online as fast as possible, because especially if they get finished off and they spawn later in the level, that can bring up some really hard situations, like especially if you're being like chased by a boss through the level and you're a solo player and all 3 of your teammates spawned later in the map. That it can just be a game-ending scenario right there, because often, depending on the boss, you won't have enough time to pick up a teammate while he's focusing on you.
Stick an armor, elf! Don't give a fuck! Assassin! Assassin!
More stone vermin. Getting no end to them. Stone vermin.
Okay, we're kind of getting into the lower, I don't know, important rules right now. So this is going to be rule 8, where higher difficulties is where the game becomes real. This kind of alludes to what I was saying at the start, where some people just kind of play the game on easy, shrug their shoulders and just be like, yeah, the game's alright, that's fine. But then I can almost guarantee you they're not fully engaging with the game's mechanics playing on veteran difficulty. You can left click your way to victory in veteran difficulty. You do not need to implement any of the rules that I've said here to succeed in veteran difficulty. However, I would argue you do need to implement all the rules I talked about in order to succeed in Legend and Cataclysm. Generally, I'd say Legend is kind of the sweet spot of this game. This is kind of challenging enough where the game is always interesting and could always be a game over if your team plays poorly. But generally, if your team is playing well and they're competent players, you know, you'll succeed, you know, probably 90% or more of the time playing Legend. So it's challenging enough to generate interest for players who are, you know, kind of looking for that. Cataclysm is where you go to really challenge yourself. It's another step up altogether. Enemies do way more damage, there's way more of the enemies and everything like that, and then of course there's like mods to make the game even harder for the nuts out there who've just completely mastered this game. Yeah, if you're only playing on veteran and recruit, You have not played Vermintide, I'm sorry to say. These are just designed to kind of get you into the game, to get you used to how the classes play and get you used to the mechanics of the game. They're extremely forgiving. The enemies do very little damage, and there's very few of them as well. Champion is a decent challenge for a newer player. I'd like recommend kind of jumping to champion as soon as you feel comfortable doing so, because this is where you kind of start needing to learn good habits to succeed. If you just try to left click your way through champion, you're probably going to fail on that as well. And then legend is kind of really what you should be shooting for, to fully implement all of your game knowledge so far and truly test yourself. It's also the best way to kind of gear up in this game on legend, to get red gear if you care about that kind of stuff. Yeah, the reason I'd recommend jumping to champion as soon as you can, like, don't rush it. If you're slow to learn, that's fine. Stay at low difficulties. It's just the problem of getting into the veteran recruit trap is you're going to learn bad habits over time. You're going to reinforce them. You're going to be left clicking your way to victory every time. You're not going to be learning to block, push, dodge. You're not going to be learning to stick with your team. You're not going to be learning stagger and what you can stagger and what you can't. You're not going to be learning team compositions and proper talents and how they synergize with each other, because you don't need any of that to succeed in that difficulty. Champion is where you need to at least start thinking about that kind of stuff to have a successful run. Alright, rule number 9. This is just kind of a PSA, if anything, but it's about Berserkers and elites more generally. You need to be mindful that a Chaos Warrior or a Plague Monk or a Chaos Berserker are enemies that by themselves can instantly down you, right? So Chaos Warrior just needs to bring 1 overhead on you while you're not blocking or dodging. A Chaos Berserker just needs to pull off his flurry while you're not blocking. Same thing with a Plague Monk. These are very high damage threats. And something I've found with the Berserkers, personally, it could just be me, it could just be that I'm bad at the game, but I find their attack profiles are very strange. So for instance, I could like push and stagger an enemy Plague Monk in the middle of their flurry, but I find that their attacks kind of continue past the, like they'll visibly stagger, but then if I let down my guard, I'll still take a hit, even though I didn't see them hitting me with it. So there's these weird kind of like phantom hits that can come out of their kind of combo attacks. Same thing with the Chaos Berserkers as well. My general advice for Plague Monks and Chaos Berserkers is when you see and hear them, keep your guard up, right? Instantly put your guard up, dodge around them, bait their combo out, and just be mindful the Chaos Berserkers combo is extremely long. Bait their combo out, wait until they're tired, wait until you find an avenue of attack, and then start dealing with them. But just be mindful if they start winding up again for more combos.
Will not. There. Plague loose.
So that'd be my advice for them. Then for like Chaos Warriors and Storm Vermin and overhead attacks, keep your guard up as well, but you should really be trying to dodge those attacks. They're telegraphed, they're extremely slow, and the wind-up time is extremely long, but I still just like to block just in case it does connect, and then dodge out of the way when I think it's relevant. Yeah, I'm kind of telling obvious information there, but I do find a lot of newer players still just kind of walk straight into Plague Monks, left clicking, and then are surprised when they kind of go down within a second. Alright, rule number 10, avoid patrols at high difficulties. So, in my experience, a Chaos Patrol, which is basically a patrol full of armored and unarmored Chaos Warriors, is probably the single most challenging encounter in this game. Unless the only exception to that would be like a crazy mob of specials in the middle of a horde all mobbing you at once, which also does happen. But unlike the specials, a Chaos Warrior patrol can be avoided. So I would highly recommend, even at lower difficulties, even if you think you can deal with them fine, even if you really want to fight them, when a patrol shows up, treat this game like Metal Gear Solid. You know, go into stealth mode, try and hide from them, get out of their way, find alternative routes around them, because you need to start doing that in Cataclysm. You don't want to be taking those fights in Cataclysm. You want to be avoiding those, because those will just instantly wipe out runs. And you know, you're not going to be able to control this a lot of the time, especially at low difficulties. Newer players just love to run into the patrols. Maybe they're bloodthirsty, they just really want to kill everything in sight. That's fine, but I would encourage you to not do that unless, I know, you just really want green circles for ego reasons. Because, yeah, especially at high level play, patrols are a huge pain in the ass and an avoidable one. So learn to stealth past patrols in this game. Highly recommend that. Alright, rule 11. Be mindful of your teammates' needs. So throughout a level, there's going to be a finite amount of healing items and ammunition drops. Don't be the player that just holds everything. Don't be the player that, you know, grabs a healing potion, downs it in one to fill up their health, even though they weren't wounded, and then get another healing item when your teammate is over there with 1 HP, right? Don't be that guy. Pay attention to your teammates' ammunition reticles as well. So there'll be a little kind of thing in the UI up here showing whether they're low on ammo or they're out of ammo. Low on ammo is the yellow bow and arrow or crossbow, whatever it is, and then out of ammo is the red. If you take ammo when you're like, you've got half ammo and they're on red ammo, then I don't like you. So don't be that guy. Share the ammo around your team. It's very important, because when that next gas rat spawns, you might be busy dealing with the horde while your teammate, who has no ammo, is free to deal with the gas rat. But because you didn't give him the ammo, now you're both downed, right? That special just took out the two of you. So it's always better that every single one of your team is ready to fight and ready to deal with all threats. So share the resources around. All right, rule number 12 is going to be master your class, learn your class's abilities, and learn your class's ultimate. Something I personally found when I was first learning this game is I'd be a little bit shy with my ultimate. You know, just the fact that it is an ultimate, I'd be kind of saving it for the perfect moment, you know. So with Kruger's knockback, I'd wait for a really big group of rats before knocking them back. For this class specifically, that's a really bad way to play, especially because my ultimate heals my teammate for 25 temporary health. So even if there's like 3 rats around and we're just kind of like moving through the level, but all my team has like half health, it might be good just to pop my ultimate right then and there, give my team that kind of safety buffer for a fight that's coming up. That might be a good thing to do. Especially because my cooldown is kind of low, so you can see, like, I used it just before. We're almost 3/4 of the way to my next ultimate. So generally, I want to encourage newer players to be liberal with their ultimate. Use it as often as you can during moments that you think it will be useful. Don't be shy with it. There will always be another ultimate, so that's just kind of my general rule of thumb. Just on the topic of ultimates, there's also kind of 2 main classes of ultimate in this game. There's a kind of a defensive ultimate that usually clears space for your team, so that's what this one is. So if I use this, it's going to stagger everything around me. And a few other classes like, you know, the Ironbreaker, the Witch Hunter, the Sister of the Thorn to a lesser extent, you know, Warrior Priest, Ultimate, Sienna's Battle Wizard, Firewalk. These are all defensive, fantastic space creating talents. With these talents, very, very much use them as liberally as possible to create space for your team during fights. When you stagger everything or knock everything down around you, that's basically free THP for your team, because they're going to be able to just get in there nice and safe, take out quite a few rats with their cleave or their sting or whatever it is that they're using to generate THP, and clear out a lot of those enemies before they get back up. So it's just a huge boon generally for your team to use those as often as possible. and not just save them for that perfect moment. Because that's going to create a positive spiral, right? If your team has more space, they can create more THP. They got more THP, they can take more damage in the future. They can take more damage in the future. They've got more time to use their own ultimates, which then, you know, will help you, and so on and so forth. So it's like this positive reaffirmation through kind of liberal use of these talents. Now, broadly, the other kind of talent is, ultimate is killing ultimates. And they typically deal with either killing elites and specials and bosses, right? So what do we got? We got, Barden's minigun, great at taking out elites and bosses. Hunter's invisibility is defensive for him, but gives him that space to take out any specials that are coming in. Carillion's volley shot is just, you know, the best special clearing talent in the game. It's also very low cooldown, so, you know, if we're talking about the Waystalker, again, buying into the sound cue thing, if you hear an assassin spawn and you can hear him like chittering behind a waist-high wall, pop your ultimate towards the wall, and the arrows will seek out the assassin and kill it ahead of time. And, you know, it's low cooldown, so there you go. You just negated some damage or annoyance to your team that assassin would have created otherwise through a liberal use of your ability. I know it's kind of like telling you stuff that, you know, you should probably generally know as a gamer anyway, but that's kind of my rule, is just like learn your class, learn when to use an ultimate, when not to use it, and be liberal with it, especially at lower difficulties. Alright, last rule, number 13. Lucky number 13. Last rule is sometimes retreating is a good idea. So if you're walking through, you know, a chasm and these walls are close in on either side, but you've got like an open ceiling and there's a horde ahead of you kind of impeding your progress, and then you hear a gas rat spawn, maybe it's not a good idea to go through that chasm. Maybe it's a better idea to pull back, get into an open space, lure the horde out, deal with the horde, then wait for the gas rat to walk through the door, and then shoot him in the face, right? That is probably a better play, because not doing that, you need to walk through the chasm, you need to clear the horde. Oh, you catch a glimpse of the gas rat up here, you try to pull out your weapon, you're getting hit by the horde. Ah, shit, he throws his grenade, it's on top of you, the horde's still hitting you. That's not a good engage. This also applies to bosses. If you hear a boss spawn, you generally want a nice, largish arena that you can kite him around in, instead of an enclosed area where it's hard to see any specials that are coming in, where it's easy to get crowded in by the horde while the boss is wailing on you. So just be mindful. Take note of the ground that you're on, take note of the threats that are impending, and if you need to backtrack through the level to take a better engage, then do so. Alright, that's going to be it for my 13 rules for newer players. Hopefully it helped you.